Well, good morning. I am very glad to get to be with you. And the handout for this Sunday school hour is coming around, so make sure that you get one of those. Matt will be by. But I want to give you, during the Sunday school hour, an update on Ozark. And before I actually jump into all of that and start kind of talking through this handout, I'll start this way. This little presentation is brought to you by the word now. And I'm going to make a confession. I am usually not a now kind of person. I am a later kind of person. Did you know that if you take a few letters out of the word procrastinator, you actually get the word proctor? That is true. That is a thing that is true. And I'm not always a now person. I am often a later person, all right? But at some point, we all face a carpe diem moment. You remember that phrase, carpe diem, seize the day. And we all face a seize the day moment. I'm going to tell you about one of mine. This was many years ago, November 1991. I was a newlywed. Now, some of you might know the Bunton family. They are connected, by the way, to the Wood family that you all do know. And I married into the Bunton clan. And in November of 1991, I was a newlywed, had just married Katie, and I was visiting Katie's family for Thanksgiving. And that's when her three older brothers, her three older farmer brothers, her three older big burly hairy brothers, decided that it was time to teach me, the new guy, how to water ski. Now, Katie and her brothers, they all grew up on Sunday afternoons going over to Lake Stockton. And they were excellent water skiers. I mean, they could slalom, they could barefoot, they built skier pyramids, they could do everything. I had never water skied in my life. But at Thanksgiving dinner in 1991, Marty and Mike and Matt all said, "Proctor, it's time." All right, they figured it's time for me to learn how to water ski. Now, at that moment, I knew that if I said yes to this invitation, that it would be risky. I knew that it would be hard. At that point in my life, I might have weighed 150 pounds dripping wet. I was skinny as a corn stalk back then. And I knew that if I did this, I could fall, I could break myself. Plus, it was November. Okay, the water at Stockton I knew was going to be absolutely frigid cold. And I was very tempted to say, maybe later. But even as a dumb 21-year-old kid, I recognized this is probably a strategic moment. And I knew that if I said yes, I could probably earn a little bit of trust. Maybe I could impress these big, burly men, hairy men, manly men. And so I said, carpe diem, let's go. All right. And so we loaded up in their van. We headed over to Lake Stockton. The water was 48 degrees in Lake Stockton. So her brothers decided that I should learn how to water ski in a wetsuit, a full wetsuit. Now, I don't know, do you know how hard it is to try to learn how to water ski in a heavy, full-body, too big for you wetsuit? On a scale of 1 to 10, it's an 11. It's very, very hard. But her brothers put me in the wetsuit. They got me in the boat out on Lake Stockton, threw me out of the boat, and then they threw the skis to me. I had never done this before, remember, so I finally figured out how to wrestle the skis on. And then they threw the rope to me, right? And her older brother, Katie's older brother, Marty, says to me, he says, "Hey, when you get the skis on," he says, "you just yell, 'hit it,' and we'll take off." And then he says, "Oh, and no matter what happens, do not let go of the rope." Now, I'm not a very smart man. And I thought to myself, okay, all right. I will not let go of the rope. I'm going to impress these guys no matter what happens. I will not let go of I will be the world's expert at not letting go of the rope. All right. And then they were just smiling amongst themselves. And I was ready. So I yelled, "hit it." And they did And I did, okay? I mean, I popped right up out of the water and then smack. I smacked right down on top of the water on my face, but I did not let go of the rope, all right? And I was hanging on for dear life, and I'm bing, 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 bouncing across the top of the water. You just changed my name to Skip. That's what I was doing. Skip, 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 right across the top of the water. And finally, I realized, oh, I'm an idiot, and I let go of the rope. Did you know that the human nose will actually hold about 2 gallons of water when properly inserted? And, her brothers, of course, are enjoying every sadistic moment of this. And finally, they swing the boat back around. And they throw me the rope again. They're laughing. And on the 6th try, I was determined to do this, all right? On the 6th try, I finally got up. And oh, man, the rush. Some of y'all are water skiers. You know what I'm talking about. Just the thrill of the speed and feeling like you're skimming across the top of the water and the wind whipping through your hair, and the water spraying behind you, the adrenaline is rushing. And I'm pretty sure that was the first moment that her brothers thought, oh, maybe this kid's going to be all right after all. And I realized that whatever that moment had cost me, it was totally worth it. I was glad I did not say later. Today's talk brought to you by the word now. Some of you might know this quote from Shakespeare. Shakespeare said this. He said, "There's a tide in the affairs of men, which when taken at the flood leads on to fortune, but omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in misery. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures." And Shakespeare's point is simply that strategic moments, those high tide moments, they have to be seized now, or they can be lost forever. The Bible puts it this way, Colossians 4:5, make the most of every opportunity. So today's talk brought to you by the word now, and here's the way I kind of like to move through this talk here today. I want to talk about the news right now at Ozark, the news right now, and then I'll talk about the needs right now. All right, the news right now and the needs right now. So you got that little handout. Everybody's got the handout. And let me talk about the news right now. Just, one of the questions that I get asked the most as I travel around is, well, how are things at the college? How are things at Ozark? And I love that question because it lets me give folks a little update. And so let me do that right now. Let me just share the news of how things are going at the college. And this is just kind of the standard little handout that I give. Most of you all are familiar with the work of the college, that little first heading, a mission to train Christian leaders there. That's for those that may not be familiar with the work of the college. Milford has been one of our very long time, very generous supporters. But for those that might not be aware, Ozark is a school that was started way back in 1942, down in Bentonville, Arkansas, during World War II, of course, 1942. Little band of believers there had a dream inspired by that one scripture from Matthew chapter 9, where Jesus looks out over the crowds, harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd, and he says, "Oh, look, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to raise up, to send out laborers into his harvest field." And that little verse burned in the heart of these believers down in Bentonville, Arkansas, and they dreamed of a college that would train up those kind of workers. And so down in Bentonville, Arkansas, 1942, that's where Ozark Christian College was born. Now, back in 1942, Bentonville, just a sleepy little town. Now, today, what is Bentonville? It's the headquarters for the world's largest corporation, Walmart, right? And one of the fastest growing cities in the country, all kinds of world-class amenities. But back then, just a sleepy little village. And so our founders in 1944 said, hey, Bentonville's never going to amount to much. Let's move to Joplin. And clearly, preachers, not prophets. But that move was a very good move for the college, because when we moved to Joplin in 1944, the college really did begin to flourish. And what started as just a little handful of students there in Bentonville has grown to over 800 plus students now, and thousands and thousands of workers over the last 84 years have been trained for the harvest field. The vision, the dream of that little band of believers in Bentonville is being realized by God's great grace. And that's who we are at Ozark Christian College. We are a classic Bible college, which means that our one mission, the one thing we do is we train men and women for Christian service. 90+% of our grads go into some kind of ministry, and they have taken the gospel to all 50 states, over 100 countries around the world now, 84 years later. And when I'm asked that question, hey, how are things at the college? How are things going? If you asked me to put in a single word, I would use the word blessed. Honestly, we are in really good days at the college. We're very blessed. And what I'll do just in sharing the news now is kind of talk about those blessings in 5 categories that you'll see there on your sheet. First of all, just enrollment blessings. And I think I've got some slides. You'll see a slide up there on the screen, which actually shows that these days, nationwide, college enrollment has been declining. You may not know this, maybe you do, but college enrollment has been declining since 2010. But fortunately, or really by God's grace, providentially, our enrollment has been growing over that time. Back in the fall of 2017, we had 580 students. Last fall 2025, we had 818 students. So that's a 39% growth. To be honest, we're this fall looking at an even bigger class coming in. And so right now, like literally every bed for this fall on campus is filled. In fact, we're making plans for a few overflow folks. But that's a wonderful, wonderful place to be. So the Lord has blessed us in sending young men and women that want to train for the harvest field. So enrollment blessings. We're very, very glad to be welcoming in lots and lots of students. Here's a second category of blessing, and that is financial blessings. And by that, I simply mean that we are actually in a really healthy place financially as a school. Now, the sad thing I wrote there on your sheet is that over the last 10 years or so, we've had a number of sister colleges, other Bible colleges, that have had to close their doors because they have struggled. Many of those struggles have been financial, and we grieve the loss of those sister schools. And so one of the questions that I'm often asked is, hey, how is the college really doing? And by that, they mean, are you going to be able to keep your doors open? Are you financially healthy? And again, by God's grace, the answer is, yeah, we're actually in a really good place. We just finished up June 30th of this summer. We just finished up our 15th straight year debt-free. We're heading now into our 16th straight year debt-free. You bet. That's God's grace and His provision through His people. We finished up our last capital campaign, which I put there on your sheet. It was called the Ready to Go campaign. It was an almost $6 million campaign to help us renovate some of our dorms and do a couple other projects, and we met that goal. We've got 4 of our 6 dorms now renovated. I'll talk about those last 2 before we're done here today. But we're in a good place financially. We're not just rolling in cash, but we are in a very, very good place, and we're grateful for that. Here's a kind of a third category of blessings. I'll call this organizational blessings, and by that I just mean our workplace, like our culture at the Ozark employees. It's just really healthy. We a few years ago started taking what they call the Best Christian Workplaces survey. That is a survey, and it's an organization that helps Christian ministries cultivate healthy workplaces. And we took that. There are probably between 1,000 and 1,500 different Christian ministries that take this survey, and so we took it, and what they actually told us is, wow, you guys are one of the healthiest workplaces like in the country. In fact, they met with us because there's a lot of Christian colleges that take this, and they said, you're like either number 1 or number 2 in like all of these categories. So we would like to point other colleges your way. We're not a perfect place. We've got our problems. You can ask Jerry. He worked there for a long time. Yeah, Jerry got out. And so we're super healthy now, is the point. And no, you know I'm joking. But we're not a perfect place, but we enjoy each other, all right? Well, I get to work with some awesome people is what that means. That people who love each other, who love the Lord, who believe in the mission of what we're doing. And so it's a place of joy. And we believe in what we're doing. And so that's a great blessing. We count our blessings to be in a healthy organization. Here's a fourth category. I'm going to call this strategic blessings. Strategic blessings. Every 5 years at the college, we put together a 5-year strategic plan where we pick kind of a handful of initiatives after doing some, just some survey work and also a lot of prayer. Lord, what are the things you want us to focus on over these next 5 years to give some extra time and attention and effort and dollars to? And we usually come up with 4 or 5 of these initiatives that will help us advance our mission over the next 5 years. So we just last year completed the 2020 to 2025 5-year strategic plan. And so what I've listed there are just 3 of the initiatives that we had in that plan. And by God's grace, those plans moved forward. So 3 of those initiatives, one of them was to modernize campus. As I mentioned, we have 6 dorms. We have 3 men's dorms, 3 women's dorms. And structurally, they're all very sound, but they're all 60 plus years of age or older, and we're starting to show their age in a lot of ways. And so we needed to do some renovation, some updating of HVAC, of plumbing, just all kinds of things. And so over those 5 years, we were able to get 4 of our 6 dorms completely renovated, and we're very, very grateful for that. Another one of those initiatives on the 5-year plan was to expand our resource base. As our ministry grows, we do need to expand our financial resources. And so just partnering with more people. During those 5 years, we were able to grow from 308 supporting churches. Milford's been one of those for a very long time. We're very grateful for that. But we were able to grow from 308 to 372 churches that are jumping on board and saying, hey, we believe in what you're doing. We want to be a part of this and support this work of training up men and women for the harvest field. And so that was, again, God's provision in our plans. Here, this is kind of a fun story. One of our initiatives in the last 5-year plan was to promote the college specifically through marketing. We had hired a higher education expert, this consulting firm, to come in and say, hey, help us just do what we do better. Like, look us up from top to bottom, look us over, tell us how we can improve. And so they did, and they came back and they said, hey, you guys are doing awesome in all these areas. Here are a few areas where you can grow. One of those areas was this. They said, you guys do really good work, but you don't tell your story that well. In other words, you need to just let more people know about what's going on at Ozark Christian College. Marketing, specifically, is what they were talking about. And so here's what we decided to do. You may know there's kind of 2 big broad categories of marketing, right? There's traditional marketing, so you just think of commercials, whether you're seeing advertisements in a magazine or whether you're seeing commercials on TV. But traditional marketing says, hey, here we are, right? That's traditional marketing. Content marketing is another kind of marketing that says, hey, here you go. Content marketing tries to give people something that is of value to them, some kind of content, to introduce people to the work that you do. So we've done some traditional marketing over the last 5 years, taken out advertisements in Christian magazines and things more than what we used to say, hey, here we are. But we really want to kind of lean into the content marketing side and say, hey, here you go. Here's something that might be of help to you, and we'll introduce you to the work of the college. One of the big pieces that was part of that content marketing was something called the Next Level Bible Teaching Videos. Now, I don't know if you guys have, any of you are familiar with those. Maybe you've used them around here. But these were just kind of free Bible teaching series that our profs put together. And we put them out there free on our website as a way to, A, help people and help churches as they're studying God's Word, but also introduce more people to the work of the college. And so we put those out there on our website, and there's Dr. Shane Wood, and he's talking through the whole book of Revelation there. And here's what happened. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with a ministry called Right Now Media. Great. So Right Now Media is kind of like Netflix for churches, right? They've got all these great teaching videos. Well, we put our videos just out on our website for free. People started using them. And after a couple of years, Right Now Media came to us and they said, "Hey, we saw your videos. They're really great. We would love to pay you guys so that we could put those on our website. Can we do that?" And we said, "Yes, yes, you may." And so they paid us money and we put our videos on their website. And then a couple more years passed and they came back to us and they said, "Hey, people really love your videos. You guys are really good at this." We actually were doing a survey of our own website, and we realized there are some Bible books that we don't have any material on. Could we pay you to make series on those Bible books? And we said, yes, yes, you may. All right. And so we did that. And what Right Now Media has told us, I put this, I think, I put it there. And this is actually an old figure. It'd be higher now. But like about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, Right Now Media said, "Hey, just so you know, our metrics show that about 7.5 million viewers have actually seen your Bible content, and so 5 loaves and 2 fish. God has taken these little Bible teaching videos that we make on our own campus and just boom, exploded them far beyond what we could have asked or imagined. And so, have we been able to kind of share the good news of what Ozark is doing, what the Lord's doing there on our campus? Well, yeah, far beyond anything that we ever could have imagined. So all that is simply to say that 5-year strategic plan, man, the Lord just pushed that forward in ways that we couldn't have planned on our own. So blessings, we're very, very blessed. Let me talk about one more category of blessing here, and that is academic blessings. And what you'll see that I wrote there on the sheet is that we have added a full graduate school. Now, a theological graduate school is called a seminary, right? It just does at the graduate level what Bible colleges do at the undergraduate level. And we've actually added a seminary. So our sister school, Lincoln Christian University in Lincoln, Illinois, unfortunately, was one of those schools that was struggling, and they had to close their doors in 2024. The one part of their school that was still doing well was the seminary. It was the graduate school. They were having a hard time recruiting students to the undergrad. They had some financial challenges, but the seminary itself was actually still doing well. And so they came to us and they said, "Hey, would you all be willing to take our seminary as we have to close our doors?" And we said, yes, we would be honored to. I did my undergrad at Ozark, but I did my graduate work at Lincoln. That's where I got my master's degree. And so a lot of us at this school, folks that you would know, Mark Scott and other people, did their graduate work at Lincoln. Has a long history of training wonderful leaders and preachers and harvest workers. We said, yes, we'd be glad to do that. That's a bit of a challenge, just to be honest, to take on a new seminary for a number of reasons, but not least among them is accreditation. Now, we at Ozark, we have dual accreditation. So we have two accrediting bodies. One is the National Bible College Accrediting, which is called ABHE, the Association of Biblical Higher Education. That's recognized by the federal government. And so we have to go through lots and lots of different steps to kind of be accredited with them. Then we also have what's called regional accreditation, which is it's a secular accreditation, but that's HLC, Higher Learning Commission. So that's the same folks that accredit Missouri Southern, Mizzou, Oklahoma, Kansas, all the colleges that you can think of here in the Midwest. That's all regional accreditation. So we have two accreditors, which has made us a better school, and it's helped our students a lot. But when you add a seminary, that means you have to add a third accreditor, okay? Because that's a whole different accreditation. That's usually a 6 to 8 year process to walk through that. By God's grace, that accrediting body, which is called ATS, the Association of Theological Schools, they helped us get it done in 10 months. Like, that's crazy. That's just a complete God thing. We're not that good. The only way that happened is that the Lord was going ahead of us and making that thing happen. But here's why that's such a huge blessing for us, and why I'm calling this an academic blessing, is it opens up a whole new realm of possibility for us to train men and women for Christian service. What those Bentonville believers were dreaming of way back in 1942. Well, Now there, because one of the things that I'm going to talk about here in a minute is um, what's called the shrinking ministry pipeline. In other words, there are fewer young people that are going into ministry today, and I'll give you some numbers about that in a little bit. Um, but you know what's not shrinking? What's actually growing is the number of what you might call mid-career people who are going into ministry. People who may have done a math or a teaching degree or a law enforcement degree or whatever. They did their degree in something else, started a career, but then heard God's call into ministry. And so a lot of churches across the country are kind of hiring these folks from within their own congregation, people who love Jesus, they already know the church, they've got wonderful marketplace skills and training, but they don't have any biblical or theological training. They don't have any education at all in that, and they want that very much. And what the seminary does then is it lets us, because they've already got a bachelor's degree, but it lets us help equip these people. And you don't have to relocate to Joplin to do that. All right. You can do all of this. You can do it completely online, or you can do it in what's called a hybrid, where you take part of your class online and then you come to campus and take some intensive classes over the course of an intensive week. And the seminary is already growing. It's booming. We're having, I've taught a couple classes in the seminary. And I had people everywhere from Delaware to Florida to New Mexico and everywhere in between, just in my classes. People who were, there was this guy in North Carolina who he's a pharmacist. He's got his PhD. There's a middle school teacher in Delaware. There was a lady who had been in charge of an insurance agency in New Mexico. All these people had felt called into ministry. And now we're able to really provide an opportunity to train them in a way that fits their life, their situation. And so this has just opened up a whole new realm of prospective students, people that we can train for those harvest fields. So that's what I'm calling an academic blessing, is the addition of this seminary, Lincoln Seminary. So now, I obviously travel around. I get to talk about the work of the school. In fact, my children, God bless them, when they mock me, which happens regularly, when they want to imitate Dad, one of the things they'll do is, at Ozark Christian College for 80 blah, 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 blah years, they do this, and because I've got my little standard spiel, right? Well, now, instead of saying at Ozark Christian College, I have to say at Ozark Christian College and Lincoln Seminary, because our identity has expanded. We have this whole second school that's allowing us to train men and women for Christian service. And it really is a blessing. So I told you that today's talk is brought to you by the word now. That's the news now. That's how things are at Ozark. Okay? So that's the news now. Let me spend the last few minutes I have here talking about the needs now. The needs now. I mentioned to you that a number of sister schools, unfortunately, have had to close. There are, in our fellowship of churches, the independent Christian churches, there are about 5,000 congregations in the U.S., and we have 17 schools, 17 accredited colleges that are associated with the independent Christian churches in the U.S. So unfortunately, that's down. We had 25 schools, 10, 15 years ago. And another thing that has happened is some of our sister schools who are doing wonderful work, but their curriculum has actually expanded. Whereas they started as focused Bible colleges like Ozark that were just training ministers, now they're what's called Christian liberal arts schools. So ministry is still very much one of their majors. They're still training people to serve the Lord in that way, but it's one major among many. So in other words, you can go and get your science degree, or you can go and get a degree in accounting or whatever it is. And we need good Christian scientists, and we need good Christian accountants and all those things. That we're grateful for what they're doing. But what it means is that there are fewer young people today, at least in our colleges, that are being trained for ministry. Quick numbers. In 2013, okay, there were roughly 950 graduates of our colleges that had a ministry or Bible major. So 2013, 950 of them, okay? So in the fall of 2024, there were less than 450. Okay, so like a 50% drop in 11 years of ministry majors. So what that means is that once upon a time we were one good Bible college among many good Bible colleges in our movement, but we are fewer and farther between. We're training of the ministry majors that are coming out of our colleges. We train more than 1/3 of them just at Ozark. Okay, so we are kind of needed now more than ever. We're the largest Bible college by far. We're also now the largest seminary among our movement. And we are in some way, like you go, the North American Christian Convention is a name that some of you will recognize. It's now called the Spire Conference. It's kind of morphed and transformed. But at last fall's Spire Conference, a third of all the speakers on stage were Ozark grads. Okay. What I'm saying is churches are looking to us more and more. We're training a disproportionately large number of leaders in our movement, which means carpe diem, seize the day. There's an opportunity here, and we want to faithfully steward this responsibility. Okay, Lord, if that's what you've called us to do, and if that's what you've called us to be at this time in our fellowship's history, then we want to lean into that. And so, I didn't, Brad, we're still working on some brochures, but we're actually starting a new campaign. I told you we finished up our Ready to Go campaign. Our next fundraising campaign will be entitled Now More Than Ever, because we are kind of needed now more than ever in our movement. And that campaign will actually help us finish renovating those 2 dorms so that we've got all our dorms renovated and ready to be used for years to come, so we can keep training those young men and women. It will also help us build a seminary building, because we welcome the seminary onto our campus, but right now it's kind of like when you adopt a kid and they're just having to sleep in some other kid's bedroom and you shoved them in there. So our seminary, when they come on campus for their intensive classes, we have to kick out about 20 undergraduate classes from their classrooms. And so they're just meeting in every crook and cranny and stairwell and whatever around campus during those intensive weeks, so that we can make room for the seminary student. We need a home. We need a place for the seminary. So we've already got plans drawn up. We're raising money to build that seminary building. And so that's what this next campaign is going to be about, finishing those 2 dorms, doing the seminary. The one other piece that I'll tell you about that we're really excited is something called the Lifelong Leaders Initiative. And what this is, it's little coaching groups, it's little mentoring groups for young ministers in their first ministry. I told you the ministry pipeline is shrinking. Part of that is because there are fewer people going into ministry. Part of the reason it's shrinking is because there's a leak in the pipe. There are a number of young ministers that get out into ministry, and in the first 10 years, man, they're in a hard church, they're in a hard ministry, they feel alone, they get discouraged, and they end up dropping out of ministry. And what we'd like to do with these ministry coaching, mentoring groups is encourage them, mentor them, give them ongoing support after they've graduated from Ozark to help them stay in ministry for the long haul. So that's the Lifelong Leaders Initiative. And we'll be recruiting, we've already started recruiting these kind of ministry coaches that will mentor these little groups of 6 or 7 young ministers. So those are the 3 initiatives: the dorms, the seminary building, the Lifelong Leaders coaching groups. They're going to be part of this next campaign. And I would just love right now, fair warning, I am going to come and ask you guys for money at some point. But right now, I would actually ask your prayers, because the way a capital campaign works is you often go to your biggest donors, the people who have a wealth of resources by God's grace, and you start there. You ask those folks, hey, would you? And so, I've already asked one church, hey, would you give $1 million to this campaign? Because it's going to be a $8.6 million campaign. And they said, yes, we're in for $1 million. That's fantastic. I've got another church that I already said, hey, I'm going to come and ask you for $1 million, so just get ready. And so, and then there's another church that I've also told, hey, I'm going to come ask you guys for $2 million, so just get ready. And so that's where I'm at. I'm just telling you guys that's the season of life that I'm in right now. Is I'm going around and kind of talking to some of these major donors and asking for these big chunks of money, which is weird, all right, because I'm a farm kid from Iowa, all right. But I'm just going to ask for your prayers. Would you pray that the Lord would provide? Because it takes all the gifts. It takes all the small ones and all the big ones. It takes everybody jumping in together to see this work of training men and women for Christian service advance. So would you just be prayer partners with us for right now? And ask that the Lord would give us favor, would connect us with the right people, that he would provide for us so that now more than ever, we can be training workers. The harvest is still plentiful and the workers are still few. I have a nephew. His name is Ben Proctor, and he and his wife, Sarah, they graduated from Ozark not long ago, and they will be leaving in about 4 weeks for Africa. I can't even tell you the name of the place because it's one of those places that you can't go in as much. But he's a Bible translator. The kid he's got a crazy good brain. He knows Greek inside and out, and he's going to go learn this. He and his wife learn this language in Africa, and they're going to translate God's word for an unreached people group there. And that's one of a dozen stories I could tell you right off the top of my head. Because there's just lots and lots of work that needs to be done. I'll close with this one. On the screen, you see that picture there is my son Luke. I don't remember if I've told you this story or not, but I'm going to tell you again. So this is my son Luke, and when Luke was in high school, he's a good kid, love the Lord, but he's a squirrely kid. Oh my word. Just loved to play pranks and loved to, torment his siblings and was just a high energy kid, high adrenaline kid. And I can tell you, I'm very grateful to be able to tell you that he never got arrested in high school. But I definitely did have to go. I got a call on a Sunday morning at 2 a.m. From the sheriff's office down in Lamar saying, hey, you need to come pick your kid up because we picked him up for playing a prank down there with his cousins in Lamar. And so this is my boy, all right? We're so proud of him. And so... and he was actually going to head to Mizzou, and he was going to go to be an engineer when he graduated from high school. But that summer after his senior year, the Lord just got a hold of him. I mean, we were trying to just pray for him and not pressure him in any way. But the Lord called him into ministry, and he said, I think I need to go to Ozark. I'm going to scrap this scholarship I got to Mizzou and go to Ozark. We said, that's awesome, buddy. Glad you're going to follow the Lord's call. I sat down with Luke, and I said, I'm really glad you're going to be at Ozark this fall. Here's what I need you to do. Before classes begin, I need you to go to the Dean of Students' office, and I just need you to introduce yourself, okay? Because you will end up in his office, prank boy, before the year's done, and you're going to need a pre-existing relationship here. He needs to know who you are. And he laughed, ha ha ha, and he did it. He went and did it. Let me tell you specifically about this picture. This was his freshman year. He was in speech class. He knew that they have to do a demonstration speech in speech class, where you got to demonstrate something. And so he had grown his hair out all semester long because the title of his demonstration speech was How to Give Yourself a Mullet. All right. So he brought the clippers to class and gave himself the mullet that you see in that picture there. He'd actually been trying to grow a mustache all semester, but it didn't come in. That's Sharpie marker is what that is. Very proud of the boy. That's a Sharpie. And then, what a dork. And anyways, so that's the before picture, okay? That's the before picture. Let me show you the after picture. Well, back up there. There you go. So that's Luke now, okay? Luke married a wonderful young lady that he met there at Ozark. Her name's Rebecca. Some of y'all might know Kevin Moyers over at Reinhardt Christian Church, and that's Rebecca Moyers is who that is. And wait, I got to tell you how he met Rebecca. So Rebecca was actually a student assistant in the Dean of Students' office. And Luke was in there so much that he struck up a friendship with her and talked her into dating him. And now they have 4 wonderful boys, my grandsons. I was just out there a few weeks ago. And what I'll tell you is this. I was out there just like 3 weeks ago. I preached at the church. He preaches at a church in Indianapolis, all right, Plainfield Christian Church. They run like 2,500 people, and they're just reaching people right and left for Jesus. I was preaching for their 4 services, and during every service, Luke would lean over to me, and he would just say, "Dad, you see that?" He said, "Don't look over there now, but that young man right over there with the black shirt, he's alcoholic. He was lost in the bottle a year ago, but he's standing there next to his fiance. They already have a kid, but they're getting ready to get married, and he's right on the verge. He's about ready to give his life to Jesus. He's been coming." And he would tell me, "You see that guy right over there? That dude was alcoholic. He was a raging alcoholic 5 years ago. He's a Navy man. He's a rough old Navy man. But man, Jesus got a hold of him and just turned his life around. In fact, he said that he's got a tattoo on his leg, and he got it changed. Now it says ship luck. That's not what it used to say." and and he would just tell me story after story after story of these people whose lives were getting just completely transformed. That next picture that you'll see there, they did a baptism Sunday where they just challenged me. He preached this good old sermon on baptism, and 23 people walked down the aisle. And I used to think that my greatest joy in ministry was getting to baptize somebody into Jesus, and that is still a high and holy privilege. But now I think my greatest joy is getting to watch somebody that I got to help raise a little bit baptize somebody into Christ. I heard somebody put it this way: my fruit now grows on other people's trees. And what I'm saying is, you guys have been supporting. Listen, that kid was not ready to do any of this when he showed up at Ozark. He wasn't ready to be a dad. He wasn't ready to be a father. He wasn't ready to be a preacher. He wasn't ready to lead a church. But God did a work in him there. And you guys were part of that. You supported. Those 23 baptisms, that's your fruit growing on his tree. And that's just replicated over hundreds and thousands of times in our graduates. And this work matters now more than ever. So I would ask, would you keep praying that we can fulfill the dream of those believers down in Bentonville, Arkansas so long ago, that workers can be trained for the harvest field because the harvest is still plentiful. That's the news from Ozark Christian College.